So you've got 4 pillars: strength, stability, VO2 max, zone 2.
Yep.
Strength and stability. Talk to us about that.
So strength is probably the easier one for people to understand. That's basically your ability to generate force. And of course, within strength, you have different areas of strength. So I don't do a lot of maximal stuff anymore. So in other words, I'm rarely, if ever, I don't think I really ever go below 3 reps. So the heaviest I will go is 5 reps stuff. So I'll do deadlifts that
85% ish.
Well,
you don't know your 1RM because you're not doing it, but
I can sort of predict it because I do use a velocity tracker. So have you seen these?
Yeah, the bar speed things.
Yeah. So I do measure bar speed. So I can have a prediction of it. I can have a prediction of 1RM. But yeah, usually I'm sort of in the 5 to 15 rep range when I'm training. So I'm basically, but what I'm always trying to do is make sure I'm somewhere between 0 and 2 reps in reserve. So I'm really training off reps in reserve.
Got you.
That's my overarching principle of training is so even if I'm at 5, I'm probably training to 1 to 2 rep in reserve. If I'm at 15, I'm still 1 to 2 reps in reserve.
There's the bodybuilders out there that want to do supersets and drop sets to failure that are tearing their hair out at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure. And again, there are absolutely sets where I do go to failure, but the truth of it is it's very hard to go to failure all the time. I think if people are being brutally honest with themselves, like
they still had another 1 or 2 reps left in the tank.
I know what it's like to go to failure. And you only have so many of those matches every day. So I don't even try to play that game. I just sort of say like, I know I've learned that if I stop now, there's only 2 more I would get before I would violate my form so badly that I would either injure myself or, just effectively.
Transcending ego lifting is one of the most difficult things that you can do. Forget about the consistency and all of that. It's transcending ego lifting. Strength, formulating a strength protocol across the week. What are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing large lifts? Are you prioritizing session length, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. First of all, there's quite a bit of variability in my training. But generally I'm doing 4 days a week. And not generally, I'm always doing 4 days a week, and it's 2 days lower body, 2 days upper body. Now I've for years also done 3 days of mixed longer sessions, but I prefer what I'm doing now. I prefer doing 2 lower body days, 2 upper body days. And I prioritize big lifts, and I'm sort of working on so today I had 24 working sets of upper body. On Monday I had 18 working sets of lower body, and probably on Friday it'll be a little bit more volume. It'll probably be 22 to 24 sets of lower body working sets.
In that 5 to 15?
Yes.
Which is ish RPE 8, E 8.5.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe as little as 7 on some things.
Especially if you've had the shit night's sleep the night before.
Yeah.
When you're looking at movements, for instance, what was your session this morning? Can you remember in terms of exercises?
Yeah. So I did floor presses.
Dumbbells?
Yep. I did pull downs. Mm-hmm. I did incline press. I did row. I did incline curl, overhead tricep extension, and then a preacher curl. It's not a true preacher bench, but hanging over a bench, doing a preacher to create the same angle.
Yep.
And then laying tricep extension. And then always in between them, I'm doing stability work. So we didn't come to stability, but I do 2 dedicated days of stability a week. So Tuesday, Thursday, I do a full dedicated hour of stability training. And then on the off days, that's not Tuesday, Thursday, I'm getting in at least 20 minutes of stability per day on either side of the exercise, like throughout the workout.
So the stuff that we've gone through so far, the gym bros will still understand what cardio is. The cardio bros will still understand what lifting is. Nobody understands what balance training is.
Yeah.
No one understands. What are the principles behind this? No one's ever thought about stability training before. How do you integrate it into your workouts? And then also, what does a dedicated session look like?
Yeah, it's very difficult to explain. It's actually, I think it was the hardest chapter in the book to write, truthfully, because it's it's hard enough to show people in videos or to have friends over who want to work out with me and put them through the exercises. That's actually very difficult. So, I lead with an analogy in the book where I talk about the difference between street cars and track cars, because I'm a car nut and being on the racetrack is probably one of my favorite things to do. And so the analogy I give is this, which is if you take a street car with very high horsepower and you put it on a track and you let it race against a track car, which is lighter, less horsepower typically for a given engine size or for a given class size, slick tires on it, which one's going to be faster? I mean, it's no comparison, right? The track car rips the street car into oblivion, even though, by the way, the street car will go faster in a straight line. So the example that I use in the book is a real example. I compare at the time, this is 7 or 8 years ago, my street car at the time was like a modified E92 M3.
Mm-hmm.
So
nice. Very nice.
I'd modified it, changed all the airflow. That thing was putting out 475 horsepower.
Big German beast.
Yep. And at the time, my track car was a spec E30 M3. I'm sorry, not even an M3, just a spec E30.
Okay, right.
Okay.
But everything's stripped out, roll cages in, stiff as hell.
Stiff as hell, 165 horsepower.
Wow. What engine's in it?
Oh, this is the stock engine. Yeah, it's a 6-in-line.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So you've got the stock 165 horsepower engine. It's very light. The car weighs like probably 2,400 pounds versus the M3's 3,400 pounds.
Yeah.
M3's got street tires on it. This one's I'm running, probably hand-cooked slicks on it. But to your point, the chassis, stiff as a button. Suspension, super stiff. And yeah, I was going faster in the straightaways in the M3, but my lap time was 2 seconds faster, which on a track might as well be a day.
Yep.
In the spec E30. And of course, what does it come down to? It's cornering speed. What does cornering speed come down to? It comes down to, of the 165 paltry horsepower in that engine, every little bit of it is making it where it belongs. Remember, what is the name of the game in driving a race car? It's all about friction. It's all about power loss. It's all about transmitting what's happening in the crankshaft to the tire to the street. That's it. You only have 4 points of contact with the outside world. Nothing else matters. And so, again, we're not talking about aerodynamics because these aren't aero cars, right? So in the street car, first of all, I have much more slippage at the tires because I'm not running slicks. Secondly, the chassis is so loose, right? So
wallowing all over the place.
I've got all this energy loss with energy leaking out of that car, not making it to the surface of the track.
It's like having laxity in a joint.
That's right. So every time you're hurting your knee, you're hurting your elbow, something's hurting. That's an energy leak. So again, even if one doesn't care about performance, just from an injury perspective, this is something we want to avoid. We want to avoid it. And again, my introduction to stability only came the hard way. It's not like I was born out of the womb realizing this was an important thing. I mean, I had to go through horrible injuries to finally arrive at this place where I said, I'm tired of being in pain. I'm tired of the fact that my elbow hurts when I do pull-ups and, half the time I deadlift or squat, my back hurts, my SI joint hurts the next day. Like, I was just kind of tired of that. And then I got very fortunate in that I landed in the company of a guy who I write about in the book briefly. His name is Michael Stromsness, and he's a practitioner of something called DNS, Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization. And the very first time I met him, at the time I was like, my main complaint was basically my right SI joint and my right elbow. I had tennis elbow, having never played tennis. And he said, all right, take your shirt off and hop up on the bar and do some pull-ups. So I did and rattled off, 15 pull-ups or something, which I could do easily at the time. And he's like, oh, that's horrible. Like those are, and by the way, these are good form pull-ups. I'm not doing like bro pull-ups where I'm like jerking up and down. I'm doing like full extension up, like everything perfect. And he's like, yeah, you have no capacity to control your scapula. So your scapula is winged. And in doing so, you are transmitting all of that force into your elbows. You cannot retract your scapula. You don't have the control. You don't have the stability in the scapula. So you're leaking energy through your scapula into your arm. So to make a very long story short, that which started in 2017 just took me so far down the rabbit hole of not just DNS, but other schools of thought. I would later go on to meet someone named Beth Lewis through Michael, who has her own expertise around other disciplines. And we basically just started piece by piece rebuilding my movements. And by the way, that meant spending a year not doing pull-ups and not deadlifting as I relearned how to align my body again. And so today, I'll still spend 2 days a week working with a guy here in Austin named Kyler Brown, who's amazing, working on just dedicated DNS things. And again, if you watched the exercises I was doing, you would be thinking, what is he doing? Why is he in these baby positions, like moving in these odd ways? But a lot of what DNS is based on is the idea that up until we were about 2 years old, we all moved almost perfectly. Most of our movement patterns that are corrupt, which we all have as adults, only started to kick in once we were about 2. Maybe 1, but generally about 2. So there's a very predictable, neuromuscular set or sequence of movements that are genetically programmed into us. The ability, the way a child reaches for something, the way a child rolls, the way a child stands, the way a child, gets into a bear position. All of these things are basically hardwired into us. And the goal of this type of training is to basically provide a software update on the crappy software we've overridden that system with.
Let's say someone doesn't live in Austin, doesn't have access to your very smart friend.
There are lots of DNS practitioners across the country.
But you would advise doing this with instruction?
I think so, yes.
Sufficiently complex and nuanced, and
I think DNS is very difficult to learn. I shouldn't say that. I haven't tried to learn it off, videos and online, and there might be ways to do it. But I think, trying to find a practitioner is a good way to start. And then once you have it going, it's always great to continue on your own. And there's a lot of stuff I do with my friend Kyler that's not DNS. I mean, one of the issues I've been having injury-wise, I have very flexible ankles. I think a lot of former swimmers do. And so one of the drawbacks of that is when I love doing box step-ups.
We're both cut from the same cloth. I knew that you were a massive fan of these. They're my favorite movement for the lower body.
I absolutely love, I love doing them in all regards. I love doing them very, very heavy. I love doing them very, very slowly, all of these things. Well, because my ankles are so flexible and I can really, really dorsiflex, I have a tendency sometimes because I guess when you want to do a step up, the real key to it is preloading the glute and the ham.
Correct. Not bouncing off the floor.
That's right. So to preload, you want to be able to shift forward and glide the femur back. Mm-hmm. That creates an enormous stretch, eccentric stretch, so that front leg is loaded. Boom, you pop up. Okay, well, in doing so, I often will drive my knees so far over my toes because I have the flexibility in my ankles. But sometimes I'll develop a little bit of discomfort there in the front. So one of the things I'm working on with Kyler is soleus strengthening to actually counteract that movement.
Bring it back.
Yeah. And so the amazing exercises that he has come up with for me to do these, to do soleus strengthening, which, again, you have to be very deliberate about doing that. It's easy to strengthen your gastrocs. The soleus requires more effort.
I learned this intimately during my rehabilitation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I overshot it. Actually, it was hilarious. So, this is not a good time to snap an Achilles, but during COVID wasn't bad. And I overshot it on my right leg, which was the one that snapped. And I ended up having to then work on my left more aggressively to catch it up because I'd ended up building up a calf that was bigger. I mean, I learned so much, man, from that. The first thing was I had a 13-day wait period because I was doing it on the NHS, although I managed to find one of the top 3 surgeons in the entirety of the UK through a friend who was on the NHS to come and do my reattachment, which was really, really great. It felt like being fitted in at the end of the day with a barber that needs to do the haircut. And I was waiting around all day. And then it got to the very end and he had to run it back and I had to go back tomorrow. I'd been fasted all day because I was going to go into general anesthetic, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, a bunch of the things that I learned from that coming out the other side were how important it is to be able to deal with not just strength but plyo, especially for that ankle position. But what I'm thinking here, when you're talking about your challenges with box step-ups, there's a guy called Dr. Eddie Joe, PhD, on Instagram. Now, he took a massive hiatus for like 3 years, but he did these really great breakdowns of academic literature in infographics, which lend themselves to Instagram very nicely. And I'll never forget this one from maybe 4 years ago, I think. And there'd been a study done looking at muscle fiber recruitment for glute exercises. And, you know, you look at the Glute Factory bum lab things for girls that want big glutes, or me that's increasingly realized that my back gets better the bigger that my bum gets. And glute bridge, donkey kickback, side raises, all manner of fantastical exercises that girls do. And he'd ranked them by the amount of muscle fiber recruitment. The top 5 exercises were step-ups or step-up variations. It's like step-up, cross-body step-up, like lateral step-up, something, something, something. And then maybe hex bar deadlift was in the sort of upper middle, deadlift another one, and then you get down toward like glute bridge, kickback, and it's at 25, and I think it's 95 on this particular scale, or this number was step up. So for anybody that wants to improve like lower body power, I absolutely adore that movement, and it's so easy to do.
We you know, in the first iteration of writing the book, I had intended to put so much detail in about instruction on like kind of the most important movements. In the end, it was getting too long. So what I did is I ended up creating videos for a handful of them. And one of them is the step up. So there's a pretty good video on the book will point people to where to go on our site to see it. And I just watched it yesterday. It's a pretty good instructional video.
Is it you doing it?
It's me doing it with Beth and I talking through how to do a step up.
Cool.
Weighted, unweighted, low box, high box, the whole thing. Eccentric, concentric. What are the pitfalls? How do you unload the ribs to, do the movement correctly and all that stuff. So
what's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.